The year was 1872. A storm gathered over the vast, untamed frontier, the wind whispering through the tall grass like a restless spirit. The wooden cabin stood at the edge of a clearing, its lanterns flickering against the encroaching darkness. Inside, the scent of firewood and baking bread mingled, a fragile bubble of warmth against the night. Emily Carter sat at the wooden table, humming softly as she stitched a tear in her dress, her fingers moving with careful precision. Her mother, Mary, worked by the hearth, the golden glow of the fire lighting the soft lines of her face. Across the room, her father, James, checked his rifle, the metallic click of the chamber unsettling against the quiet. Outside, the horses in the barn stirred uneasily. A gust of wind rattled the shutters, but something about it felt wrong. Too sudden, too expectant. James frowned, moving toward the door. He pulled it open just a crack, peering into the night. His eyes narrowed. A low sound, just barely a whisper, cut through the wind. A war cry. The night exploded. James barely had time to slam the door before the first arrow struck the frame, splintering wood near his shoulder. "Get down," he barked, grabbing his rifle. Mary pulled Emily behind her, shielding her against the kitchen wall as shadows rushed through the darkness outside. Hooves pounded against the earth, war-painted figures emerging like ghosts from the tall grass. The sharp whistle of another arrow cut through the air. A window shattered. A flaming torch sailed to the open door and crashed against the wooden floor, instantly igniting into a twisting serpent of fire. Smoke filled the room. James fired wildly into the night, his voice hoarse as he yelled for Mary to take Emily and run. Emily's heart pounded against her ribs. The fire spread rapidly, licking at the wooden beams of the house. Her mother grabbed her wrist, yanking her toward the back door. But before they could reach it, the front door burst open and figures stormed inside. Everything turned into chaos. A warrior tackled James to the ground. His rifle fired into the ceiling, sending a cloud of dust raining down. Mary screamed, clutching Emily close as rough hands grabbed at them. Emily kicked wildly, her fingers clawing at the arms that wrapped around her, but she was no match for the sheer force that lifted her off the ground. She saw her father struggling, saw the glint of a knife before it plunged down. The world slowed. James gasped, a shudder rippling through his frame. Blood seeped through his shirt, dark and glistening. He collapsed, unmoving. A wail tore from Mary's throat, but her grief was silenced as the butt of a rifle struck the side of her head. Her body crumpled. Emily screamed. The sound barely left her throat before she was slung over a horse, her breath knocked from her lungs as the animal reared and bolted into the night. The ground raced beneath her. The only thing she could see was the glow of her burning home shrinking behind her, devoured by the black maw of the wilderness. The wind bit against her skin. The jarring rhythm of the horse's gallop left her body aching, her arms bound cruelly behind her back. Each bound sent sharp jolts through her ribs, but the warriors paid her no mind. They rode for hours. The night swallowed them whole, stretching endlessly over the land. Emily fought to stay upright, her mind spinning. The world as she knew it had vanished. Her father gone, her mother left in the dirt. The thought threatened to drown her, but she couldn't let it. Not yet. Dawn threatened the horizon when the riders finally slowed. Emily's legs were numb, her wrists raw against the rope. The scent of pine and damp earth filled the air. They had reached the mountains. She was unceremoniously yanked from the horse, her knees hitting the ground with a bruising impact. Around her, the warriors spoke in a tongue she couldn't understand, their voices sharp, debating something in hushed urgency. She caught glimpses of their expressions, some indifferent, some amused. One warrior, taller than the rest, gestured toward her with a cruel grin. She forced herself not to shrink back. Another warrior stepped forward, his presence quieter yet more commanding. His dark eyes flicked over her, unreadable. He was younger than the others, his features marked with war paint but not with the same hardness. His name, she would later learn, was Taza. For a moment, they stared at one another. He didn't speak. Then he turned away. Emily's stomach twisted. She had no idea what fate awaited her, but she knew it wasn't mercy. They kept her bound as they made camp that night. She sat on the cold ground, watching them with wary eyes. They built fires, their movements fluid and practiced. Smoke curled into the night air, carrying the scent of charred meat. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but she refused to show weakness. A warrior tossed a strip of dried meat near her feet. She stared at it, then at them. Laughter rippled through the group, except for Taza. He watched in silence. She clenched her jaw. Hours passed. Her muscles ached from the bindings, her body trembling from exhaustion. She refused to cry, refused to let them see her break. But when her gaze landed on the warrior's blade resting in the dirt, gleaming under the fire's glow, her pulse quickened. If she could just reach it. Carefully, she shifted her weight, inching toward it. The warriors were deep in conversation, laughter rolling through the air. Her fingers stretched out. A boot suddenly slammed down over the blade. She jolted back, her breath catching. Taza stood over her, his gaze steady, unreadable. She expected him to call out to the others, to punish her. Instead, he crouched down, his voice low. "Do not try," he murmured. She froze. He had spoken in English. His eyes flicked toward her bindings. After a beat, he pulled a knife from his belt and, with a swift motion, sliced them loose. Emily stared at him, rubbing her wrists in disbelief. Another warrior noticed. "Why do you care what happens to her?" he asked in Apache. Taza didn't answer. He simply stood and walked away. Morning came. They rode again, deeper into the wilderness. Emily's body screamed with soreness, but she kept her back straight. The land shifted, trees giving way to canyons, the air growing dry. They were moving toward the Apache heartland. She wasn't meant to leave. The realization settled over her like a weight. She would be given to another tribe, or worse, claimed by one of them. The thought sent a cold dread through her. She gripped the locket around her neck, the only thing she had left. Somewhere in the shifting light of dawn, she caught Taza watching her. He didn't look away. Neither did she. And for the first time since the raid, a spark of something unfamiliar flickered in her chest. Hope. But hope, in the wild, was a dangerous thing. The sun was beginning its descent when they stopped near the banks of a winding river, its waters sluggish under the weight of summer's heat. The warriors dismounted, their voices low murmurs as they prepared for the night. Emily slid from the horse, her legs buckling beneath her. She caught herself before she fell, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts. Her wrists ached where the bindings had been, her skin rubbed raw. But the pain was nothing compared to the gnawing certainty in her gut. If she did not find a way out now, there would be no more chances. Taza stood a few paces away, watching her with that same unreadable gaze. He had been near her ever since the night he cut her bindings, never intervening, but never letting her out of his sight. His presence was both unsettling and strangely reassuring. The others saw her as nothing more than a prize, a symbol of their victory. But him? He was something else. She just didn't know what. As the fire crackled to life, Emily edged closer to the river, her bare feet pressing into the cool earth. The sound of water was a whisper in the stillness, a promise of escape. If she could slip into the current, let it carry her downstream, she might have a chance. The thought made her heart pound, but she knew better than to let hope blind her to the dangers. The river was not just a path to freedom. It was a test of survival. A shadow moved beside her. "Taza, you will not make it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily's fingers curled into fists. "Then let me die trying." For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Not amusement, not pity. Something deeper. He glanced toward the others, making sure they weren't listening, then turned back to her. "Not here. Not now." A chill swept through her, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "Why do you care?" Taza didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked away. Night fell. The warriors slept in scattered positions around the fire, their horses tethered nearby, their weapons within reach. The air smelled of smoke and damp earth. The river murmured in the background, a steady pulse against the hush of the wilderness. Emily lay still, her pulse hammering against her ribs. She waited, counted the breaths between the shifting of bodies. When she was certain no one was watching, she began to inch backward, one careful movement at a time. The dirt was cool beneath her fingers. A hand clamped around her wrist. She barely bit back a gasp. Her eyes snapped to the figure crouched beside her. Taza. He shook his head once. Emily's heart plummeted. But before she could speak, he motioned toward the horses. Then, without another word, he took out his knife and sliced through the rope at her feet. Confusion warred with disbelief. But there was no time for questions. She followed him, her body tense with anticipation. Every step a silent prayer that the others wouldn't wake. They reached the horses. He untied one, placing the reins in her hands. "Go," he whispered. Her fingers tightened around the leather. "What about you?" Taza's eyes flicked toward the warriors. "I will lead them away." She hesitated, 1,000 questions forming in her mind. Why was he doing this? What did he hope to gain? But then a shout rang out, a warrior stirring in his sleep. "Go," Taza hissed. Emily swung onto the horse, her hands shaking as she gripped the reins. She barely had time to urge the animal forward before Taza let out a sharp whistle, drawing attention away from her. The camp erupted into chaos, warriors jolting awake, shouts filling the night. Arrows whistled past her ears, the sound sending fresh terror surging through her veins. She rode, hard, fast. The wilderness swallowed her whole. Branches tore at her skin as she pushed the horse deeper into the forest, the pounding of hooves a frantic rhythm against the earth. The night was thick with danger, the shadows pressing in from all sides. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to keep moving. The river appeared ahead, silver under the moonlight. A war cry echoed behind her. Emily's stomach twisted. They were gaining on her. She had no choice. She kicked the horse forward, straight toward the water. The animal hesitated only a moment before plunging in, the cold of violent shock against her burning skin. The current pulled at them instantly, dragging them downstream. Emily clung to the horse's neck, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The force of the river threatened to tear her away, but she held on, even as the water stole the air from her lungs. Then, just as suddenly as it had taken her, the river spit her out onto the muddy bank. She coughed, shaking, her limbs numb. The horse thrashed a few feet away before scrambling onto land. The night was eerily silent, the war cries lost in the distance. She had made it, but she was alone. The wilderness was an unforgiving master. Emily learned that quickly. With the sun creeping over the horizon, she moved carefully, her body aching from exhaustion. Every sound, every rustling leaf, every distant call of an animal sent her heart racing. She had no weapon, no food, only the clothes clinging to her damp skin and the locket hanging from her neck. By midday, thirst gnawed at her. The river was too dangerous to linger near, so she searched for smaller streams, stopping only when her legs threatened to give out. Hunger followed soon after, a deep, unrelenting ache. She tried to remember what her father had once told her about finding food in the wild, roots, berries, anything that wouldn't kill her, but fear clouded her thoughts. By nightfall, the cold set in. She curled against the base of a tree, arms wrapped around herself, her body shivering. And then she heard it, a twig snapping. She shot up, her pulse a wild drum in her chest. A figure emerged from the trees. Taza. Shock stole her breath. He was alone. His face was unreadable, but there was no hostility in his stance. Emily scrambled to her feet. "Did they send you to kill me?" He exhaled, stepping forward. "They think you drowned Her throat tightened. She should have felt relief. Instead, all she could focus on was the simple fact that he was here, that he had followed her. Taza glanced at the sky. You will not survive alone. She clenched her fists. I don't need your help. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, not amusement, something deeper. Then why are you still alive? Emily's breath caught. They stared at each other, the weight of the wilderness pressing in around them. Finally, she dropped her gaze. Because of you. Silence stretched between them. Then, Taza reached into the pouch at his waist and tossed something toward her. A strip of dried meat. She caught it instinctively, staring at it before looking back up at him. A beat passed. He turned away, disappearing into the trees. Emily looked down at the food in her hands. She didn't know why, but she knew he would be back. And for the first time since she had been taken, she wasn't afraid. The days bled together in an uneasy truce. The wilderness demanded everything from them: endurance, patience, trust. Emily had never imagined she would rely on a man like Taza, but out here, survival left no room for pride. He taught her how to move through the land without making a sound, how to read the earth beneath her feet. She watched him strike flint to start a fire, gut a rabbit with practiced efficiency. And he watched her, too, watched as she learned, as she refused to give in to weakness, as she grew into something more than the terrified girl he had first seen by the fire. One evening, as the sun dipped low, turning the sky the color of embers, she sat beside him near a small creek. The water ran slow and steady, a quiet companion to their silence. She traced the edge of her locket with her thumb, the metal warm from her skin. I used to think the world was small, she murmured, the word surprising even herself. Just my home, my family. I thought that was all there was. Taza didn't look at her, but she knew he was listening. And now, he asked. She exhaled, staring at the water. Now, I don't know who I am. Taza was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached for a stone, running his thumb over its smooth surface. We are never who we were, he said simply. The river does not stay the same. Emily turned her gaze to him. And you? Who are you? His jaw tightened, his eyes shadowed. A man without a people. The words carried weight, more than she could understand. She wanted to ask more, but something in his expression told her that some wounds could not be spoken aloud. Instead, she reached out, hesitating before brushing her fingers against his. His breath hitched just barely. Then he stood. Rest, he said, his voice unreadable. Tomorrow we keep moving. The moment passed, fragile as a falling leaf. That night, sleep did not come easily. The next morning they pressed forward. They had to move carefully now, closer to the land of her people, but still deep in territory where danger lurked behind every shadow. Taza scouted ahead, his movements swift, efficient. Emily followed, her steps quieter than they had once been. She had changed. The girl who had been dragged from her home was gone, replaced by something harder, something forged by fire and loss. By midday, they reached a ridge that overlooked a valley, a vast expanse of golden fields stretching toward the horizon. Emily's breath caught in her throat. I know this place, she whispered. Home. It was so close she could almost taste it. Taza stood beside her, silent. She turned to him, her heart pounding. Come with me. He didn't answer at first. His gaze remained on the horizon, unreadable, distant. Then, finally, he shook his head. I cannot. A lump formed in her throat. Why? His expression darkened. Your people would not welcome me. Anger flared in her chest, hot and sudden. That's not fair, she snapped. You saved me. His eyes met hers, steady. It does not matter. Before she could argue, a sound split the air. A war cry. Panic surged through her veins. They had been followed. Taza's hand was already on his knife, his muscles tensing. Emily turned, her breath coming fast and sharp. Shadows moved through the trees below. Chato, He had come for them. Taza pushed her back against the rock. Run. I'm not leaving you. He gritted his teeth. You must. No. A moment of hesitation. Then Chato emerged, his warriors at his back. His expression twisted with fury. You betray your blood, Chato spat, his voice laced with venom. Taza did not flinch. She is not our enemy. She is white. Chato's voice cracked like a whip. Their kind took everything from us. And now you stand against your own for her. Taza's jaw clenched. This is not justice. Chato's eyes burned with something dangerous, something irreparable. He stepped forward, his hand tightening around his tomahawk. You are no longer one of us, he said, voice low. You are nothing. And then he struck. Taza barely dodged the blow, the blade slicing through the air where his head had been. The fight was brutal, a clash of bone and fury. Taza moved with the precision of a man who had nothing left to lose, his knife flashing in the light. Chato was relentless, his rage fueling every strike. Emily's pulse pounded. She wanted to help, wanted to do something, but she was frozen, trapped in the moment, in the sheer savagery of it. Then Chato gained the upper hand. He drove Taza back against a tree, his tomahawk raised. Emily didn't think. She moved, her fingers closed around a rock, her body launching forward. She swung with everything she had. The impact sent Chato staggering. Taza didn't hesitate. He drove his knife into Chato's side, swift, merciless. Chato gasped, his eyes widening in shock. For a second, everything stood still. Then he crumpled. Silence fell over the forest, heavy as a storm cloud. The other warriors hesitated. Their leader was dead. Without him, there was no cause to fight. One by one, they melted into the trees, vanishing like ghosts. Emily stood trembling, her breath coming in ragged bursts. Taza knelt beside Chato's still body, his expression unreadable. After a moment, he looked up. We must go. She swallowed, nodding. They left the body behind, the air thick with the scent of blood and loss. By the time they reached the valley, the sun was sinking low, the world bathed in gold. In the distance, the faint outline of a settlement stood against the sky. Emily's breath shuddered. Home! She turned to Taza, her chest aching. Come with me. His expression was soft now, but resolute. I cannot. She reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. Then stay close. Something flickered in his eyes. A promise. A goodbye. Slowly, he released her fingers. And then, as the first shouts of recognition rang from the settlement, as figures rushed toward her, he disappeared into the wild. Emily didn't turn back. She knew he was watching, and somehow, she knew their paths were not yet finished.